What's up YouTube, welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're talking about the new Darkness Ablaze card Vikavolt V, and how similar is it really to Seismitoad EX. If you haven't been playing the card game long enough to remember Seismitoad EX yourself, then you've almost definitely heard stories about this really powerful and annoying card. This is one of those cards that people love to hate, and when you're on the receiving end it feels terrible, but when you're locking your opponent it is amazing. So Seismitoad EX was a basic water Pokemon with the attack Quaking Punch for a double colorless energy. It does 30 damage. Your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand next turn. So it only did 30 damage, but HP was a lot lower back then. Some popular cards like Vikavolt EX, Mega Rayquaza, some of the beefiest Pokemon and strongest attackers, they didn't have a lot more HP than Seismitoad EX had. So Quaking Punch dealing 30, that was just fine. You could boost it a little bit with Muscle Band, boost it a little more with Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym, and you item locking them and chipping away at their health was a very popular and very effective strategy. Immediately upon Vikavolt V's reveal, players started calling it the next Seismitoad EX and reminiscing to the days of that early item lock with the basic attacker. Vikavolt V is a lightning-type basic V Pokemon with 210 HP. It has the Paralyzing Bolt attack, which for a lightning and a colorless does 50 damage, and your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand next turn. So you can see where everyone's getting this comparison between Vikavolt V and Seismitoad EX. For 2 energy, they do a little bit of damage, and they item lock your opponent. They have relatively the same HP, 210 isn't much higher than 180, and 50 damage isn't much more damage than 30, so for being a card 5 years in the future, Vikavolt V doesn't have a huge power buff in comparison to Seismitoad EX. Now, a problem that arises is, while there's not a huge difference between Vikavolt V and Seismitoad EX, there's a massive difference between the other Pokemon in the format at the time of Seismitoad to now and the time of Vikavolt V. So to compare some of the other popular Pokemon from the time of Seismitoad EX, we can think about Vikavolt EX with 170 HP and the Evil Ball attack, Darkrai EX with 180 HP, and even Mega Rayquaza with 220 HP, which was fairly tanky back then. Fast forward to the present with Vikavolt V, we have Pikarom at 240 HP being the low end of the HP spectrum, ADP being around the mid-tier for HP on bulky Pokemon at 280 HP or buffed up to 310 with a big charm, and then Eternatus VMAX, one of the strongest Pokemon out of Darkness Ablaze and probably in the standard format, has 340 HP and can deal 270 damage for just 2 energy. So Vikavolt might have a problem. Vikavolt V has already seen success in the Japanese standard format at the Pokemon Japan Nationals Online, which was an online unsanctioned tournament played via webcam with over 200 players competing, and the format is basically like Ultra Prism On is here. So think Ultra Prism through Darkness Ablaze. The same exact 60 card Vikavolt V list actually got first and second place in this fairly large tournament. So it's actually fairly interesting to look at this Vikavolt V list and see what differences and what similarities it has to older Seismitoad EX decks. So these lists, the list that got first and second in the PJNO, actually reminds me a lot of a Seismitoad EX deck. It has 4 Vikavolt V, and it's based around getting the item lock off as early as possible, keeping your Vikavolt alive, doing some supplementary damage, just like Seismitoad EX used to use Hypnotoxic Laser, and Muscle Band, the Vikavolt V is using Electric Power and Giant Bomb. Now the Seismitoad EX was able to attack for double colorless energy. Double colorless energy doesn't exist in the standard format, and Vikavolt V needs a lightning energy to attack, but there's ways to accelerate energy, whether it be with Tapu Koko Prism or Thunder Mountain, or even Turbo Patch, which is an option but was not included in the deck list I'm referencing. In a vacuum, Vikavolt V is a very strong card. It has item lock on its attack, which is a very strong mechanic, especially when placed on a cheap attack on a basic Pokemon, just like Seismitoad EX. In the Japanese format, it even had in common the supplementary damage like Electropower for Vikavolt, but Muscle Band and Hypnotoxic Laser for Seismitoad EX. Now keep in mind that these cards are designed with the Japanese formats in mind because they are designed by the Japanese Pokemon Company. They aren't designed thinking about when there's going to be a rotation in North America, or if it is, that's not the top priority, because the Japanese format does not rotate at the same time that everybody else does. So Vikavolt V is still going to exist in the same format as Electropower and Thunder Mountain and a Skateboard and Counter Gain for a little bit more time, and it will be able to continue reaching its potential that it's already seemed to reach in the Pokemon Japan Nationals online results. The huge caveat, and I mean it's very important to this list doing so well, is that it was in the Ultra Prism On format, and Darkness Ablaze comes out right before we have our rotation happen in standard format, and we lose some pretty important cards in terms of Vikavolt V decks. We are losing Thunder Mountain and Electropower to the rotation, as well as a Skateboard for Jirachi, so maybe you don't even want to play Jirachi builds anymore, but Thunder Mountain and Electropower are large enough losses to the rotation that it could definitely affect Vikavolt V's viability and success. If you remember, what I referenced about Seismitoad EX was, although it had that low damage output and the very strong effect of Item Lock, it made up for the low damage output with supplementary damage via things like Burbank City Gym and Muscle Band, and it was able to get that item lock off early because of double colorless energy. Vikavolt V in this Japanese format was able to do very similar things with Electropower and with Thunder Mountain. Now, with Electropower and Thunder Mountain specifically both being gone, it definitely scares me for the viability of Vikavolt V in the post-rotation standard format. So what's the verdict here? Is Vikavolt V going to be good, or is it the sad little card that gets thrown in the binder and can never live up to the expectations? Well, I think it's really, really good, like I said, in the Japanese standard format, and also in the Ultra Prism On format outside of Japan, which will be played for one large online tournament. But unfortunately, after rotation, I think Vikavolt V is going to be kind of locked into the tier 2 or lower range. I don't think it can keep up with the damage output and the high HP of the stronger Pokemon and the stronger decks out there in standard format post-rotation without Electropower and without Thunder Mountain to keep the attacks coming consistently on turn 1. So Vikavolt V and Seismitoad EX are very similar to each other, and the way the decks are built are naturally very similar to each other as well. But Seismitoad EX was just released at a time when it could thrive in the North American standard format, and unfortunately the same cannot be said for Vikavolt V. So the verdict today is very similar cards, but Vikavolt V probably will not go on the same kind of rampage as we know Seismitoad EX did back in the day. I hope you're all stoked for Darkness Ablaze like I am. Make sure you're getting your PTCGO codes over at potownstore.com and use code CELIO for 5% off to save some money and also support my content. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that and drop a like if you did enjoy this video. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about Vikavolt V and if I was right about the legacy it'll leave on the standard format. Follow me over on twitch.tv/Celios Network for my live streams. I'll be playing a ton of Darkness Ablaze decks, both pre-rotation and post-rotation, as soon as that goes up on PTCGO, and you're not going to want to miss it. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time here on Celios Network.